Well, we have a jam-packed meeting this morning, so how about we get on it? That's an idea. I like it. All right, partner. You know what time it is. Yes, it's time for the Rotary Club of St. Albert morning Zoom meeting number 1495 on for February 19th. I'm your host, President Mark Dixon, and I recognize executive members present, board members present, fellow Rotarians, and guests. Please rise for the singing of O Canada.
Native land, true patriot love, in all our sons command. In our species rise, a true north, strong and free. On fire, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Keep our land.
Wonderful. And actually, I'm very, very impressed that, Ash, you haven't been down south long enough that you've forgotten the words. So that's nicely done. Our land acknowledgement, we respectfully acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory, traditional lands of First Nations and Métis peoples. As treaty people, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, we share the responsibility for stewardship of this beautiful land. Our inspirational moment is brought to you by MacEwan. Colin, would you share with us, please?
I would love to. Thank you very much. Am I able to share a screen this morning?
Yes, I will make that happen for you.
Okay, I'm really testing my technical abilities this morning, so I hope this is worthwhile for everybody. Okay, can everybody see that? Or see the Ted Lasso image? Because I can't see anybody else anymore.
No, we can't see it.
Can't see it yet.
Alrighty, try this.
No.
There you go. Now you got it.
Okay. So I've taken a little bit more of a lighter-hearted approach to the inspirational moment this morning. I wanted to share with everybody kind of a blessing that my family and I've had with COVID. You know, all of us have been watching more TV than we should be. But we stumbled upon a program in the fall called Ted Lasso. It's on Apple TV. And I feel a little odd, you know, showcasing, you know, a program as an inspirational moment, but truly this show, like, it really grabbed our family for a lot of reasons. It's entertaining, it's comical, it's heartwarming. It's about soccer. We're a soccer family. But, you know, I was thinking to myself, you know, it really struck me as an inspirational piece, and I was trying to figure out why. So for those of you who haven't seen it, I've put a quick clip together. Let's see if this works.
We don't hear the audio.
No audio, eh?
No.
Yeah, I'll skip the clip. I wasn't sure if the audio would work. So the quick premise of the show, like I said, it's a program about an American football coach who you don't know at the beginning of the show the premise, but he goes over to England to start coaching a premiership soccer team, and he's very much out of his element. And but the character, like, you just fall in love with this character right off the bat. He's a very heartwarming, well-intended fella. And, you know, as this show has progressed, what's been interesting about it is there's been a lot of, I've seen a lot of references, and in a lot of unusual places, like the Times and Forbes, you know, citing the merit of the show. So I wanted just to showcase quickly some of the I guess, inspirational pieces that have come for the show that have influenced me over the last little bit. Like I said, Forbes actually did an article that said watching Ted Lasso can make you a better manager. And when you see the show, again, if the clip had worked, you would know, you know, kind of the nature of his character and the way he approaches his team as good reminders. You know, as good leaders, we need to trust our people. And, you know, when we're working with our teams, we may not always agree, but we need to trust each other. And, you know, he models a style where he's very laid back in his leadership style, but in doing so, he looks at the best in others and really allows them to prove themselves. And of course, I mean, you take that all and you still recognize, as a very good leader, you still have to make tough decisions. Leadership requires making tough decisions about people. And it's another piece that he really models as his character on the show. But one of the pieces that really hits home to me is the belief as a great manager in the people, and building a belief in the people you work with themselves. Because, you know, what that does, and they model this, is that, you know, belief begets confidence in your organization or with your team. And it's the cornerstone of confidence, which is essential to leadership, because people have to believe in that person in charge, and the fact that they're capable of doing a good job. So I've actually, you know, so inspired by sort of that sentiment theme, I created my own little believe sign and put it up over my office at work. And it's kind of become a little common mantra between some of my staff, and a bit of a rally cry. Just some of the other things, you know, a little bit more lighthearted, that, you know, the character himself shows it's okay to be vulnerable as a leader. You should never underestimate the underdog. Positivity and warmth will always win out. And that's, you know, sometimes hard to believe that in some of the areas that we work in. And this, I like this anecdote a lot, learning to let things go. So he had this exchange with one of his players who was having a real hard time and doubting himself because of something that happened on the field. So he said to the player, "What's the happiest animal in the world?" And the player had no clue. And so he said, "Goldfish." "You know why the goldfish is the happiest animal on earth?" And again, the player said, had no clue. And he said, "Because it's got a 10-second memory." And so he told the player, "Be a goldfish." And I thought, you know, that's a really good analogy, you know, with the struggles and things that people are facing with COVID, that, you know, other struggles that we're facing with, tragedies we face with our daily life, to not get caught in the moment and not let the moment take you down. And sometimes it's just a case of putting some of these experiences behind us and getting on. So I thought that was a really positive little mantra. So just to close my little inspirational moment, there's a picture of my sign up on my office. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of people coming through the office right now to see it, but it'll be there when we're back to normal. So that's my inspirational moment for this Rotary meeting.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Colin. And I definitely agree with you. I want to believe. Introduction of guests. And we have a fair number of guests this morning. And I would actually like to start with Don Riley, who's the chair of the Paul Harris Society with the District 5370. So welcome, Don.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Daryl?
Yes, President Mark. Have Brian Fisher back with us again today, President of KDM Management, and I'm happy to say that Brian has started down the track to become a member of our club, so that's exciting.
We got another one. Oh, sorry.
Morning.
Great to see you, Brian. Thanks so much for coming. Ash?
Mark, it's my pleasure to again introduce the volunteer coordinator for St. Albert Food Bank, Crystal Gossman, and hopefully she will also join our club soon.
Thank you.
Welcome, Crystal. Great to see you. Colin, I think you have a couple of guests that you'd like to introduce.
I'll do the quick name recognition. I have a more extended introduction as part of our keynote today.
Perfect.
But joining us are Ruan Bauer and Sean Waddingham from the Students Association of MacEwan University.
Excellent. Welcome, Sean and Ruan. Anybody else? I'm not seeing anybody else.
We have Maddie from Belgium.
Thank you. Maddie from Belgium is
Morning.
here. Nice to see you, Maddie. And Natalia is here as well. So no, go the other way. You know what time it is.
Welcome to Rotary.
Glad
Glad
you are here. Come shake our hands and share a friendly cheer. Whether from near or whether from far, we're glad you're here. We hope that you will like our little song because we're proud of St. Albert, and you'll agree our club is
to enjoy some great camaraderie.
We do what we can to help the needs of our community with our friends at Rotary. With our friends at Rotary.
Nice. Well sung, Charlie. Thank you. So let's get right into our guest speakers. Colin, if you wouldn't mind doing the introductions, please.
Yes, thank you, Mark. And again, good morning to everyone. I'm very pleased to introduce our keynote topic and guest for this morning's Rotary meeting. Our topic this morning concerns Alberta's advanced education system. As Rotarians, we are a people of action. We are a collective of passionate people with diverse perspectives who gather to exchange ideas as we communally take action on our world's most persistent issues. And as you know, one area of focus for us in Rotary is education, empowering educators to inspire learning at all ages. While much of our scholastic focus is foundational in nature, all of us appreciate the value a strong system of education plays in building healthy communities. Today's keynote discussion is an opportunity for you to learn more about Alberta 2030, Building Skills for Jobs, which is a comprehensive review and analysis of Alberta's post-secondary commissioned by Minister Nicolaides, the Minister of Advanced Education. It's also an opportunity to gain some insight on the perspective of our current post-secondary student population in response to this initiative. Our guests have joined us today to share some information and perspective on these recent provincial initiatives to review Alberta's advanced education system and answer any questions that you have. So over this past 7 months, I've had the distinct pleasure of working with these two very talented, committed, and passionate gentlemen at the Students Association of MacEwan University. Our first guest, Ruan Bauer, is the Vice President External for the Students Association and a fourth-year honor student in political science. His academic interests include international relations, developmental economics, post-colonial politics, and he is currently channeling these interests into an honors thesis on the political evolution of post-apartheid South Africa. Outside of academics and work, Ruan enjoys playing music, watching history documentaries, and indulging in his favorite video games. And prior to his election as VP External, Ruan served 2 terms as student counselor, where he was first indoctrinated into the cultish world of student politics. Sitting on the Bylaws and Policy Committee at SAMU, Students Association, allowed him to see the tangible effects that abstract policy discussions can have on students' lives, and inspired him to run for his current position. Since being elected, Ruan has negotiated an improved UPass deal for MacEwan students, participated in the extensive Alberta 2030 review, and also helped to organize the recent snow penguin protests regarding government budget cutbacks to post-secondary education. Also joining us this morning is Sean Waddingham. Sean is the president of the Students Association of MacEwan University and a self-described politics nerd who also loves to play music in his spare time. Between reading, following current events, and listening to or practicing music, he tends to keep busy with the things he loves doing when not at work. Sean is also a dedicated student with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. Focusing on political philosophy, his honors thesis discusses the history and implications of Rawlsian liberalism as a school of political thought. He intends to carry on in the subject of political theory by pursuing a Master of Arts degree. However, his interests in politics go well beyond theory as well. American politics and international relations have been other main topics of interest along the way. With his roles at Student Association of MacEwan University, first as Vice President Academic and then as President, Sean's practical political interests have shifted somewhat. Moving away from the grand scale of American and international politics to more of a focus on the political scene in Alberta and Edmonton, he's began to take a greater emphasis on bettering his community. As a student advocate, Sean hopes to create connections between student causes and the larger community, since a thriving post-secondary sector can be of benefit to us all. So I can tell you from firsthand experience with these partners in crime that their intellect is remarkable, their commitment to serving students is inspiring, and their energy is infectious, and I'm certain you will enjoy their discussion today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ruan to start us off.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Colin, for that very flattering introduction. Also, I believe Sean will be sharing a PowerPoint from his laptop. Perfect. Wonderful. Just get a second to get everything all set up. There we go. Please forget any spoilers that you may have seen. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, or for allowing us to join you. So what we wanted to talk to you about was something called the Alberta 2030 Post-Secondary Education System Review. We have our names there at the bottom, but I feel we've gotten a flattering amount of introduction already. So Sean, if you could go to the next slide. Okay, so before we kind of get into what this big review process is and some of the implications that it's going to have for the post-secondary system in Alberta, two players that we're going to have to explain a little bit, just because we're going to be referencing them a lot, and we don't want it to be too esoteric or random sounding. So first of all, we have Alex Usher. He's the founder and CEO of Higher Education Strategy Associates and a well-known expert in Canadian post-secondary education. He's been very involved in student politics for a very long time. The federal advocacy organization that we partner with, the Canadian Alliance of Students Associations, he was actually their first executive director. So his history runs deep in the student politics world. And he is widely seen as a good source of information. Then on the other hand, we have our provincial umbrella organization that SAMU partners with, as well as the University of Alberta Students' Union, University of Calgary Students' Union, University of Lethbridge Students' Union, and the Athabasca University and Students Association of Mount Royal as well. So that organization has kind of been the key way that we mobilize at a provincial level, and the format through which we kind of engage with the provincial government most of the time. Just so, once again, cause, referencing our provincial organization, and Alex Usher, big player in post-secondary politics. And next slide. So why should people care about this? It's some weird review that's taking place very much not in the spotlight when things like COVID, the vaccine rollout, everything is seemingly much more pressing, and I think justifiably it's getting much more attention. But we also don't want to allow large changes to go unnoticed in the background. So why should you care about this review happening in the post-secondary sector in Alberta? Well, there's a lot of changes that could be coming down. A lot of this was actually the outcome of a previous report. I don't know if many of you may have heard of it, but there was the MacKinnon panel, the Blue Ribbon panel, which the government commissioned a year ago. Yeah. And this panel and the MacKinnon report that came out of it basically provided a list of ways to reduce expenditure at the provincial level. Essentially what happened was the Premier and a couple of ministers went to Janice MacKinnon and a couple of other influential people that had worked on this kind of spending reduction stuff before. They sent them away and said, hey, can you come up with some of the ways for us to reduce our expenditure? Don't look at revenue. That's not a question. We made a campaign promise about taxes. We don't want to touch revenue. So that came back with a whole bunch of recommendations for a whole bunch of different sectors. And one of the comments that the MacKinnon report had actually made was that the post-secondary system in Alberta lacks a kind of strategic direction. It lacks an overarching purpose, I guess. It kind of just, is meandering around. So this Alberta 2030 review was kind of commissioned to directly address that problem outlined in the previous report. There's no direction in post-secondary. Let's give it a direction and let's make sure we reduce spending while we're at it. So a couple of big changes that have been discussed and that are on the table are things that affect institutional funding, so how we fund our universities and colleges, tuition, because tuition is regulated by the provincial government, which programs are offered, the ease of creating, developing new curriculums and things like that. And then a really big one that will become more prominent later in the presentation is governance and autonomy. So the basic functioning of our universities, the fact that we have boards of governors that are able to make decisions on behalf of those institutions, and work placements as well. So really sweeping, like there's nothing that's off the table, so to speak. So because of these high stakes, SAMU and CAUSE have been aggressively involved. Actively is putting it a bit too lightly. We have been extremely involved in this process, trying to get information on a daily basis and reaching out to the ministry to have discussions about some of the nitty-gritty of these topics. So another part of this, why we think it's worth bringing attention to, is that it seems like there was a lot of early emphasis on consultation and incorporating stakeholders into the big review. I mean, to change a huge system to make a big transformative change and to not consult the people who are going to be, transformed is something that obviously I don't think any government would want to do. That being said, the consultation really hasn't happened that much. When it has happened, many of the stakeholders, not just students, have found it very lacking. And we found that there were a few initiatives that were seemingly being pushed from the get-go. So there were some, not to say that they had a totally formed idea of what they wanted out of this review, but they definitely had a formed idea of some of the things that they wanted out of this review. So those two big issues were the sector level boards, which I'll just say briefly is essentially making all of the boards of governors at our various institutions varying degrees of useless and subjugating them to a sector level board. And because institutions receive funding from the government, the government gets a say on who sits on the boards of governors of different universities. And the previously mentioned Janice McKinnon actually sits in the board of governors at the U of A. So, many of these people are quite in the ecosystem. And then tuition deregulation was something we were also quite worried about, because obviously, this can be seen as a way of the government reducing the amount of money that it has to throw into the post-secondary system and making the institutions, raise the cost for students so that they can maintain similar levels of funding. But we'll kind of get into some more of the practical outcomes there. This is a clip that I think was very interesting one that circulated quite early in our terms. So this is an interview between Jason Kenney and Ezra Levant from the Rebel, which is kind of a more right-wing outlet. I'll put it mildly. They have some questionable credibility and everything, but the point of this clip is not to besmirch anyone or to try to guilt by association the premier, but really this is just to say that there were intentions coming into this review, and I think that the premier kind of speaks to them a little bit in this clip. So I'll let Sean hit play on that if he has the audio sharing all figured out as well.
I should have that, but let me know if that works. And then if it doesn't, I can play it through the microphone.
Perfect.
For which I don't have an easy answer, is how to address the prevailing political attitudes of millennials. I think it's the first generation to come through a schooling system where many of them have been hardwired with collectivist ideas, with watching Michael Moore documentaries, with identity politics from their primary and secondary schools to universities. That's kind of a cultural challenge for any conservative party, any party of the center right, and we've got to figure out how to break that nut.
Yeah. So. I mean,
for which I don't have
it's part of like a longer interview and everything, and I don't think that we clipped this out of context, but I think it is worth bearing in mind that the premier sees the post-secondary education system as part of this. I don't want to use too much loaded language, but kind of this collectivist indoctrination system, and that at the very minimum, there's kind of an ideological friction that's underlying this review. So now to kind of get into some of what's been going on in this big amorphous blob we call Alberta 2030. Yeah. So why was there a review? I already talked a little bit about the McKinnon report, which spurred on some of the initial motivation for this. But the post-secondary education system has not been updated in a mass way for a while. So this was actually warranted. As much as we may see varying degrees of him being critical about the provincial government later on, Alex Usher actually initially praised Alberta for doing this review and said, why aren't other provinces doing this and taking a serious, good, hard look at their education system, how it fits in with their economy, and being more conscious about this stuff. So some of the issues that were alleged against our pre-existing system with Campus Alberta were duplication of different administrative duties across different institutions that could have been coordinated better. There could be a more efficient allocation of resources. Transferring between institutions is not always the easiest thing, and there's no reason for that. I believe in British Columbia there's like quite a good system for transferring between institutions, and we obviously look to other similarly sized provinces as a reference point. And then cooperation between institutions is hard because a lot of times they're competing for the same market share. so to speak. So, you know, it's not always easy for them to want to give away trade secrets or be open about some of their strategies. So this was the contractor who will actually be conducting this review, or who has conducted this review now that it is wrapping up. This was McKinsey and Company. I don't know how many of you would have heard of them, but they're quite a well-known consultant firm internationally, I believe. I know that they have some colorful history. If you ever want to take a look at their Wikipedia page, they've done some interesting things in the pharmaceutical sector in the United States, and for some governments like Saudi Arabia, just to mention a notable one. So the overall cost of the review is about $3.7 million. So not an insignificant amount of money to put into this review. And once again, we'll talk about some of what that cost is actually going into in a second. So, and also, don't worry, this slide, as busy as it is, you'll see very quickly where our focus is. So these are the kind of stated Alberta 2030 goals. So this is what the government wanted out of this review. This was what they sent to McKinsey when they were saying, hey, you know, please go off, do your review. This is what we want out of it. So the first thing, access and student experience. Of course, you know, we want the system to remain affordable enough that people can still attend. Skills for jobs, which has been really a big part of this review, which is working with work integrated learning, internships, getting students in the kind of education to jobs pipeline. Innovation and commercialization. This mostly has to do with commercialization of research. As an undergraduate institution, we don't really deal with this. Internationalization, similar kind of thing. A lot of that has to do with like more of the broader spectrum of having high profile researchers working at your university. The last two are kind of our focus. So financial sustainability, because of the implications that this has for funding, and governance, which, as mentioned before, you know, with the proposal of these mass boards that would be governing entire sectors of our post-secondary system, those two questions really were much more consequential than the others. Yeah. So, two dominating goals: board consolidation and funding. So, yeah, it was very interesting to see the language that they used of the driver and the enabler as the funding and governance parts. But we actually, I'll make a slight correction to the slide. We didn't hear about these two topics from the government very much. We heard about the sector level boards from the government, and we heard about tuition deregulation a lot from McKinsey. So McKinsey has done some other work in the post-second, or a little bit of in the post-secondary sector. They've written up some reports on how they see it. A lot of their proposals, I would say, are more of a kind of traditional fiscal conservative approach. So, you know, deregulating tuition, kind of focusing on like the more kind of like profit-making capacity of universities and their ability to integrate into the economy and provide value that way. Then we had, yeah, so a lot of this was kind of leaked through journalists. So we got a lot of information that way. The two primary sources being CBC's Janet French and then Alex Usher, as previously mentioned. So they kind of, it was very helpful that they were able to get some of that information out there so that we could engage with it and find out what was going on. Then, yeah, so then we had this was kind of going back to our issue of consultation, that we made a lot of comments, not just us, but every stakeholder in this process made a lot of comments about the tuition deregulation proposal from McKinsey and the sector boards from the government, and it seemed to be ignored. So we had a call with the Minister of Advanced Education, Demetrios Nicolaides, and had asked him specifically about the sector boards, and he had initially said, we want them to be an air traffic controller. We want them to manage the system from a kind of strategic vision perspective. And we said, great, that sounds fantastic. We want coordination. We just don't want direct control from these boards. And then in a one-on-one or a two-on-one call that Sean and I had with the minister after this round table, which was with cause, the minister actually said, the more I think about it, the more I think we should have quite give these boards quite a lot of power. We should not have them be do-nothing boards. And that was quite troubling to us. There was talk of bringing the ability to create and get rid of institutions, giving that power to these sector level boards, which made us a bit nervous that it might lead to something like the consolidation of rural colleges, which would be very damaging. Before I attended MacEwan, I attended Keano College in Fort McMurray, and I know that has been that college in particular has been a big target for the government because of how costly it is to operate. But the big takeaway from this one is that nobody wanted a sector level board. The boards of governors didn't, or the boards of governor chairs didn't want the sector level board. The university presidents didn't want a sector level board. The faculty didn't want it. You run down the list of all the big players in post-secondary education, and no one was very keen on this idea, especially the kind of more extreme version that we heard from the minister. But yeah. Then this is an excerpt from our friend Alex Usher. He's kind of saying, I'll just kind of read out the quote. So what's the alleged benefit of having a single board for each sector? Beats me. It's not administrative streamlining. And this brings us to a final point. If this is all reasonably well known, why are the McKinsey consultants proposing something this unnecessary? Well, according to one of my correspondents whose knowledge of the Alberta government I trust implicitly, the McKinsey consultants aren't the originators of this particular idea. Rather, it comes directly from the Premier's office. I'm not in the know as to why they think this is such a great idea. Charitably, they may believe in the University of California model. Less charitably, they may just want a more streamlined method of yanking universities' chains. So I think that quote really sums up a lot of our feelings about this, the sector level boards proposal in particular, because we, like I said, on the kind of charitable side, they were talking for a while about the University of California as a good model for Alberta to look to, where you kind of have, the University of California satellite campuses all over the state. And there was kind of some light talk and some scary implications that the same thing might be happening to our institutions in Edmonton and Calgary, where something like MacEwan becoming a University of Alberta satellite campus, the Mount Royal University becoming a University of Calgary satellite campus. So, and I mean the latter more pessimistic take that Alex Usher has, the yanking chains. As I mentioned before, because of that public funding, the government is entitled to appoint members to the boards of governors. Unfortunately, or fortunately for us in the current system, there are many boards of governors, and there isn't really a way to make sure that they all follow the same line. The government can't really, whip all of them into a room. It would be too big of a room, for them to get something out of them. But if they're only managing one sector level board and they still are able to put representatives on that board, then we might have more of a problem. And then then we have, so mismanagement has been kind of another accusation against this review. It is quite costly for the amount of work that has come out of it, or that is going to be coming out of it. The timelines were changed a lot. There was a lot of disagreement and fighting between the government and McKinsey and all of the stakeholders, ourselves included. So we'll just look briefly at the cost breakdown. Yeah, so the first column there is is the initial estimates for the whole review, how much money would loosely, if you were kind of on the upper end of the estimates for a lot of this, how much would kind of go into it. And then on the latter, in the second column, is the revised estimates. So this is, when we went from having our 10 to 15 issue papers, then became issue PowerPoints. So a lot of this was kind of changed on the fly, and there were some revised estimates on how much that would take. But obviously the amount of funding didn't, or the amount of money going into this didn't change. So you can see at the bottom there, I will direct your attention to the bottom row of pure freaking profit taking. But yeah, so this was kind of ended up costing the public quite a lot of money, and we've kind of gotten a bit less work for it than we might have otherwise wanted. And then I'll pass it off to Sean to talk briefly about some of the outcomes of this.
Great. Am I audible? Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I'm going to try to truncate the outcomes and maybe some discussion on tuition, since we're kind of running up against the time here. But I think the main takeaway is what we've discussed so far. I mean, the main concern is the governance review and the potential for an overarching governing board that takes the governing power away from the universities' boards of governors, and the colleges as well, all post-secondary institutions. So the problem is, though, we don't really know what's going to happen at this stage. We at a certain point heard that, these sector level boards, as Ruan said, are more of a coordinating function. Then we hear soon after that they're more of a governing function, taking more responsibility, having more power. And now we're kind of in no man's land, where we've pushed back hard against the idea that they should have a full governing power and take that power away from the institutions. And it kind of sounds like that feedback is now finally registering a little bit. But we don't know how long that'll stick, because we've been getting the feedback for so long, and after the first round of getting the feedback, it didn't stick. I think because there is more pressure on this government at this time, and there's a bit more scrutiny, maybe that's why it sounds like our feedback is swaying them a bit more now than it would have before. So because it's kind of a mystery, there's a whole range of possible outcomes. I'm just going to focus on governance reform and funding reform, because that's those big goals from the 6 goals that we showed you earlier. It could be a sector level board that's fully in control of governance, which would be, in our mind, a problem. Or it could be a sector level board that has only a coordinating role. I imagine with the money that they spent, there's going to be a sector level board. The question is what it does. And I think, if it's a coordinating role, that might be okay. That could be totally fine. It just depends on the details, right? And then the funding reform change, they have this performance-based funding system now. So maybe this review kind of tweaks that system a bit. Maybe there's small changes. On the other end, maybe we get huge cuts and tuition deregulation. Now, just like the full governing power of the sector level boards, I don't know how likely it is that we would actually have full tuition deregulation at this point. It kind of sounds like that's being, kind of sounds like they're backing off of that idea. And so I guess just to be fair to the review, I wanted to highlight the risks and the opportunities. The risks we've already covered. I think it's pretty obvious. When they talk about the driver being governance, we're worried about board consolidation. When we talk about the enabler being like the financial efficiency usually means rely more on tuition for the revenue and not government grants. So those are the risks. Big cuts that translate to tuition dollars and board consolidation, because if one board controls the entire sector, we see that as a tremendous issue in terms of autonomy and control. But the opportunities are there too, and I don't want to understate this, because the work integrated learning opportunity is real. It is real. I think that work integrated learning could be a lot better in Alberta, and I certainly wish I had an internship in my program. I think that would have been great. And if that comes along with the review, which it is supposed to, that would be great. Also kind of the coordination element of Alberta 2030, you know, if they have a coordinating board, maybe that helps coordinate sexual violence and mental health policy across campuses. Maybe that helps coordinate and streamline programs between institutions. So I think there's some real opportunities here in this review. And talking about these risks that I've highlighted here, so this funding reform and this the kind of potential for large funding cuts continuing from Alberta 2030 because they focus so much on efficiency. I just wanted to end off this presentation by spending 5 or so minutes on the tuition issue, because it's a really big issue faced by students, and we're seeing some pretty historic cuts right now and some historic tuition increases to go along with them. So I'm going to try to summarize this slide by just saying that the cuts are very big. If you just look at the MacEwan cuts, the first round of cuts, we got an 8% cut, 7.9 to be precise, and that was the highest in the province. Despite MacEwan being one of the most efficient campuses in the province, we got slammed with that 7.9% cut, which was something around 10 million that year. So you're talking about a huge reduction in that first year, and then another follow-up reduction the year after that. We lost between 10 and 15 million in those 2 years at MacEwan. And so, yeah, some of this is from performance-based funding. Some of this is from investment management agreements, which tie into performance-based funding, and Alberta 2030 kind of is part of, I suppose, justifying that efficiency approach to university. But yeah, the main point is that, as you'll see on the next slide, these cuts are very unusual and haven't really happened before. So if you look at like the progressive conservative government from before the NDP's term, they were investing in post-secondary very strongly. And the progressive conservatives put a ton of money in post-secondary because, hey, we had a lot of revenue, why not invest it in something that has a very high return? And post-secondary just happens to have that. So you can see that in the 2008 to 2014 area here. And then recently, the cuts are historic. I mean, the total Campus Alberta grant cuts that you see here, it's about a $100 million cut, or sorry, a $1 billion cut in 4 years, which I don't actually have on here. But what that means is it's bigger than we've ever seen before, and you can see it from this graph. You see the Alberta CPI chugging along, but the funding to post-secondary institutions per student dropping dramatically. In the post-secondary department's work plan, you can see roughly $1 billion reduction in post-secondary funding for the 4 years of the UCP government, which is what you're starting to see here in this big nosedive. And then next quickly is the historic tuition hikes. So you'll see the numbers here on the far right. At the end of the 4 years of tuition increases, or 3 years of tuition increases, Alberta's average tuition per year is going to be above $8,000, and the Canadian national average is below $8,000. So we went from pretty far below it a couple years ago to a couple years from now being decently above that average. And it gets worse because we are below the national average for grants. And so this is a really big problem because while it may seem like, oh, you know, we're barely above this $8,000 average, and the Canadian national average is barely below 8,000. So it's not too big of a gap, right? But it is when you look at Ontario and New Brunswick, who have the highest tuition, who have twice as much in the case of New Brunswick, or 3 times as much in the case of Ontario, of grant availability per student. So you see 2,000 per student in Alberta. In Ontario, it's around 6,000 per student in grants. And that's a tremendous difference. So it's not just that we're going above the national average, but also that we don't have the grants to back that up. So yeah, big funding reduction, big tuition increases, no grants. And this is a big part of why we're concerned about this review and how it fits into the bigger picture of the student issue in Alberta. And this is kind of the last sum up of the costs that we're facing before I open the floor for any kind of brief questions, if anyone has any. But it's not just tuition. The problem is we're facing cost increases on all sides. It's everything right now. Employment is down, of course, that goes without saying. But on top of tuition, the tax credit for students that was put in place by the progressive conservative government of many, I think, over 2 decades ago, it was eliminated. And this is going to cost students, on average $1,000 per student per year. And that's on top of tuition. Then you have the student loan interest rate hike. The summer temporary employment program was terminated. And as I've already mentioned in the previous slide, we have the lowest grant availability for students in Canada. So that's kind of where we're at. And I think the governance side and the tuition side are the two most important things that come out of Alberta 2030. I hope we've kind of done a good job of explaining why they matter and why the stakes are high. And if you want to learn more, we've got a ton of places you can go to do that. I think Cause's Twitter account is great for this stuff. My SAMU president one will be passed on to the next SAMU president and is also pretty decent. And Alex Usher is always good and is really engaging in the way that he writes. So I really like his stuff. And we mentioned at the very beginning, the Penguin for PSE campaign against the recent cuts, which you can find at the URL there. So that basically sums up everything we want to talk about today. So I just want to say thank you so much for letting us talk about this. It's really quite a meaty topic for this early in the morning. And there's a lot of details and there's a lot of intricacy, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak. And if you gleaned anything from this, just remember those highlights of the board consolidation and the rapid tuition increases being big concerns for us that we're watching closely and hope to learn about when they unveil this, the report from and the recommendations from this review in a couple of months. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you so much to Sean and Ruan for the informative and insightful presentation. I have to say, if you two gentlemen are examples of what we're looking at for the next generation, our future is bright. Oh my goodness. I am so jealous, Colin, of you working with these gentlemen on a daily basis. Questions for Sean and or Ruan? Alan. You're on mute, Alan.
First, a comment. It seems that the thrust of where we're going with this is to change universities in Alberta from institutes of advanced learning to job training institutions. So if we're looking for higher education, maybe we have to look at going to different places. My question is, who paid for the consultant? If it wasn't the provincial government who paid for McKinsey's 3.7, it was, because if the province paid for it, all consultants try to make the people who pay them happy. So they weren't consulting, they were creating a report that would support the government in what it wants to accomplish.
I'll just briefly comment on that. I think that's absolutely right. Obviously, I don't want to, always assume the worst of the motives of the government or anything like that. But I think when you look at the way that they conducted the McKinnon report, I think it's very telling. It's they sent them off and said, don't look at revenue, look at spending reduction. That isn't, telling them everything that they have to do, but what could you do in that situation except tell the government, well, this is how you can cut spending. So I think that's a very well taken comment.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I've heard others say exactly what you said at the beginning, that it looks like changing the model from an education model to a job training model. I've heard that quite a bit through this process, so that sounds like that's kind of the plan. Mostly from people who are critical or a bit skeptical of it, like university administrators and some people on the Board of Governors.
I think Charlie has a question, and then Ian.
Yes. First of all, Alan, I don't think that all consultants do exactly what the client wants them to do. But my question has more to do with the governance or the coordinating boards. This goes back a long time, back into the 70s. A study in California indicated that when you have free market competition amongst the various educational institutions, what you get then is a sameness of product. And there may be small segments of the economy that require training, but there never are enough students in any given organization in order to mount the program. So coordination in that regard becomes very, very important. So your comment on that, please.
I'll let Sean answer that one first this time. I don't want to hog the initial one.
Sorry, so the question is around like the benefits of free market competition between institutions?
No, it's not so much the benefits of free market competition, it's the need for coordination to ensure that the various segments of industry and that require training. And Alan, I do come from NATE, which was an institution designed to train people for employment and that, so that's where my bias does come from.
Yes, yeah. Yes, if I may, I don't see any place for philosophy or history, sociology, anthropology, language, literature. That's been going on for a while.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what they should be aiming for is when they talk about the coordinating board or the strategic level board or something sitting on top that doesn't have full governance abilities. I think that's something that we would be happy with because it balances the ability for institutions to still offer curriculum that they are developing, for professors to write their textbooks and teach out of them and that kind of thing, but also have industry informing curriculum at institutions that need industry to inform the curriculum. And I think, there's a lot of examples. One of the examples McKinsey pointed to is actually in Israel, where they have industry experts working with curriculum with government, and then that can be applied to the schools where that fits. But then the other side of the coin, I think, is that the kind of more broad or liberal arts education that is offered by a lot of the bigger universities might end up being more resilient in a future where the jobs that are going to be available are just so mysterious and unknown. And there's a really good, I guess I bring up Israel twice here because there's an Israeli historian named Yuval Harari who I was listening to talk recently about, what do we need for jobs of the future? And I think what we need in education is people who are super adaptable and super good at learning as they go, which hopefully a liberal arts education can help some way with. So I hope that kind of answers the question. I think there's definitely room for coordination in the institutions that are doing job training. And there will always be room for those institutions that are doing job training, in my opinion. And they should get, I think, industry coordination.
Yeah, if I can just briefly complement that, I think that what I would say to the kind of question of like, well, shouldn't there be some kind of higher level coordination? And I think that comment about the sameness of product was also very interesting. I would say that like if we have the right kind, I think if we have the right kind of coordinating body overseeing some of this stuff, we can end up with like a very successful kind of, I'll use the mosaic versus melting pot distinction. That might sound familiar, but we want to preserve the unique characteristics of each university within a system that minimizes waste as much as possible. We don't want every university viciously competing against another university all the time, but if we give those governing bodies too much power, we end up with a very homogenous system that I don't think is very conducive to higher learning.
And can I just say very briefly that one thing our president at MacEwan says a lot of the time is there's good duplication and bad duplication. I think it would be good if in this process they root out the bad duplication that is redundant and wasteful, and keep the good duplication which is like you can get a degree at University of Alberta or MacEwan and the experience will be very different and they're tailored to different kind of learners. So I think that's also a big part in coordination.
Thank you for that. I've just got an eye on the time. Ian, I'll give you the last question.
Fabulous. Thank you. Gentlemen, I'm just curious about the, in the lack of funding or the change in funding model, we're seeing a large amount of direct employment at the U of A being drastically slashed. I understand that some of that is more of a consolidation of groups across the different faculties. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing completely, but it's certainly a drastic change. Is Grant Mac and Nate and the, like say, Red Deer College, U of C, are the other institutions seeing similar absolute bloodbaths as far as their faculty and their employments? Is that a common thing across the province, or is that just really at the U of A?
I would say that there has been some degree of, I mean, obviously when you reduce the amount of scarce resources that an institution has, they're going to have to pull resources away from some things and put them towards other things. To answer your question, I'll say I don't think anyone has seen a bloodbath on the scale of what U of A is seeing right now. I think they have, I think I remember hearing about this, but they had one of the, it was the most radical restructuring that has taken place in like such a short amount of time of any university, maybe ever. I mean, it really is, it's quite a severe process. So, I mean, while we at MacEwan had a lot of concerns that some of our programs would be, that some of the university programs would be cut, and we suffered the loss of the student ombudsperson role, which was very significant. That's who students go to help them navigate the system and advocate on their behalf. So yeah, no, we've been experiencing a lot of that, you know, tough times, pulling resources away from things that we really think should be well funded, but nothing on the scale of U of A. But yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Fabulous conversation, and I hate to cut it off, absolutely, but we do have lots that we need to get to this morning. Thank you again, Sean and Ruan, and as a thank you for your presentation at our meeting today, in recognition of your contribution, we will be making a donation in your name to the Rotary International Polio Plus program, a worldwide program focused on polio eradication. And I do have one for you as well, Ruan. So thank you again, gentlemen. Quickly, we will go into, we have a presentation of a Paul Harris Society member, new member, and Dawn is here to make the presentation. The recipient is shy and doesn't want their name used. So Dawn is going to speak about the program, and then the person that is in receipt of this, nominate this society membership, they know who they are. So Dawn, I will hand it over to you.
Okay, I apologize beforehand. My cows are loose and my puppy is going nuts about it. So if she starts barking, I apologize. And I'll try to keep her quiet. So the Paul Harris Society is, and I have my little cheat sheet in front of me because I always miss part. The Paul Harris Society recognizes individuals who have donated $1,000 or more US annually to the annual fund, the Polio Plus, or approved foundation grants. You can apply your money, you can ask your money to be applied to grants that are throughout the world. So people who do it annually are invited by Rotary International to become society members. In our district, that used to mean what happened was you got supper at the district conference. We did a Paul Harris Society supper, which of course we haven't done for 2 years or year and won't be doing this year. Tim Shields, our foundation chair, we're actually looking at trying to acknowledge Paul Harris Society members in a different way with changing COVID, and to acknowledge your continued people's continued contribution. So you do have a member that did elect to become a society member. So they are receiving the picture that Mark had put up, and I've got mine on here. They will have a pin, which they would have already had probably, but then they get a little chevron that says Paul Harris Society, and they received a certificate today that looks a little bit like the one that Mark did for Sean and Ron. I'd love to, there you go, without their name. So that's the certificate that they received today, and they will receive a chevron, which apparently fell out of the envelope. So I'll be sending a new one. I want to thank them, and I want to thank them for agreeing to become a society member. It's not a big to do, but it is we appreciate it. The foundation appreciates it. And that's basically what today is. So the projects that help are all of the areas of interest for Rotary. So children, adults and children for literacy, training, clean water, all those areas of focus that Rotary has. And so this contributes to that, and we appreciate it greatly. So I would invite you to, I guess, congratulate them by clap, or a thumbs up, and thank you very much. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Don. And if anyone is interested in joining the Paul Harris Society, they can reach out to Don or to James or to myself. I'm happy to assist.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Don. Really appreciate you joining us this morning and doing the presentation.
I'm glad I did. I'm a U of A baby, so I was glad I caught that presentation. I may contact you guys about my club.
Very nice. Well, and in fact, we have some quick pin presentations this morning, so I'll hand it over to James.
Thank you, President Mark. Greetings, my fellow brothers and sisters, Rotarians. Good to see everyone this morning. Full house, great presentation, Sean and Ruan. Thank you. You mentioned Noel Harari, an adaptation to change, and I think that is all of us, and change is inevitable, and sometimes we have to embrace change, and that's the only constant, is how we can look at change for opportunities. So Mr. Steffes, thank you for the goldfish analogy. I love that 10-second memory. Reminds me of Gandhi, and there are 2 days in the year that we can do nothing, that we cannot do anything, and that's yesterday and tomorrow. So that kind of reminds me, but I'm going to put that goldfish story, and I'm going to check out Ted Lasso. So thanks for that, Mr. Steffes. Dawn, my cows are all safe. My dog is not barking, so there'd be no disruptions. Thank you, Dawn, for that presentation on the Paul Harris Society. We have on our Paul Harris Society members, fellow Rotarians, we have 11 now members of the Society. So thank you to the great support from our St. Albert Rotary Club. Today, I would like to call upon 4 Rotarians to the stage. You can probably unmute yourself when I ask. Mr. Bob McGinn, are you there? Mr. Ken McRae, Mr. Frank Prosperi Porta, and Mrs. Lynn King. Can I get a little hello from all of you?
I'm here.
Hello, everyone.
Could you hear me?
Yeah, we're good. Everybody?
No.
We're all there.
Okay.
I can, yes, thank you. Excellent. Ken McRae, man, that welcome song comes on and I just think of you. You
heard that, I almost cringed.
I know, you need to unmute yourself and sing it with your positivity and your power, because it's special. So if you're ever on, I want you to unmute it and sing it like you own it.
Next time. I was having a little trouble with my audio, so I have a new webcam, so you can actually see me now. You couldn't see me for the first half hour. But
it was better actually the other way when I couldn't see you, but anyway, it gives me, today we have the privilege of recognizing 4 Rotarians, Bob, Ken, Frank, and Lynn, as club members for their wonderful support of the Rotary Foundation. Your contributions to the Rotary Foundation of Rotary International are reducing suffering, improving living conditions, and providing educational opportunities for young people somewhere in the world. Your gifts are truly selfless actions and demonstrate your commitment to our common goals of world understanding and peace. Therefore, on behalf of the President of Rotary International and the Chairman of the Trustees of the Rotary Foundation, it gives me great pleasure to present you multiple Paul Harris Fellow lapel pins. Bob McGinn, I present to you a level 6. Everyone clap for Mr. McGinn, level 6. Ken McCrae, we present to you a level 6. And Frank Prosperi Porta, we present to you a level 5. And that was good, Mark. Mr. Dixon, President Dixon is pinning those on your lapels as we're speaking. I love it. Thanks for your help, President Mark. And Mrs. Lynn King, Paul Harris Fellow 1. Yay, thank you. Okay, for your generous contribution to the annual fund of the Rotary and on behalf to extend our sincere thanks. Thank you all. Thank you for your generous contributions to the Rotary Foundation. We have 39 members who have been awarded Paul Harris Awards. Our all-time club giving is at $360,000. President Mark and the executive team have committed $15,000 and we have achieved $12,000 to date. My goal is to have every Rotarian every year. That means $20 minimum American by every Rotarian, and I think we're just about there. I just have to send Frank and the Italian Mafia out there to bash some knees to get a few more, but we're pretty close on that. And my last goal, I'll say it quickly, is my goal for this year was to have 3 new bequest members and 6 benefactors. Bequest members are members who have given in their estate over $25,000, and benefactors have donated $1,000. So my goal is 6 new bequests, 6 benefactors. I'm pleased to tell you that we have 2 new bequest members. So I only need 1 more bequest to reach the goal, and I have no new benefactors. So I'd like someone I sent out a notice on that, and please, if you need any help with that, I'd be happy to help. That's all from me. Happy day, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Congratulations to all of our Paul Harris Fellow pin recipients this morning. Our RI anniversary fireside chat is on the 23rd. Stacy, did you want to say a couple of words on that?
Sure. Thanks, everyone. Next week is Rotary's 116th birthday. So we're just having a short meeting on a Tuesday night to share with people that may be interested in joining Rotary down the road to join us and learn a little bit more about what the club's achieved in our 30-year history, why people join, a little bit more about what we do. And we'll keep it short, but it's very just celebratory. And I would encourage members to go to the upcoming events section of your bulletin and the website and register in advance and bring a guest if you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. The following day, the Gazette will be running a double-page spread acknowledging the anniversary and profiling Rotary Club of St. Albert and St. City. The wine tasting, Kim.
Good morning, everybody. So to give you an update on our wine tasting coming up on March 12th, we're really excited to say that we've already sold 57 packages and have 73 left. So again, we really want to sell this out. I'd like to thank the 31 Rotarians who have purchased 1 or more package already and remind the rest of you to follow their awesome lead. We've also got our auction, of course, and again, we've received 32 items, some multiple items from just a few members. So if everybody could step up with something, we'll certainly reach our target of 50,000. To update you, Mark, do you have that thermometer to share? Yeah, so we are already at $11,900 on our way to our goal. And to point out, there's a couple other ways that if you don't like wine, you can help us achieve that goal, which will help your President Craig with his next year for community events and all the things that we want to do. So you can buy a flag. We've already sold 2 flags. So instead of just clicking on the cart to buy a wine package, you can also put a flag on your lawn or your neighbor's lawn or your mom's lawn, anyone's lawn. So we can get our flag program boosted out in the community. You can also click on the tab to fund a need. So we've showcased 3 of our projects, the music festival, our international program, and our local projects. And if you want to click on that, you can actually make a donation to one of those specific things. You can also just make a direct donation to the Rotary Club. And then you will notice that we now have our sponsor page and our donor page. So please take a look at the website. If you don't want to buy wine, consider making a donation. Let all your family and friends know, because if everyone recommended 1 or 2 people, we would sell out tomorrow. Thanks everybody for your continued support, and we look forward to seeing you on March 12th.
And all donations are tax deductible.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Laszlo. Mr. Campbell.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick announcement that last night the Community Services allocated from our COVID relief funds $2,000 to the Roots of Empathy for a program they offer in St. Albert schools to help with the mental health of students dealing with mental health issues. That's all.
Wonderful. Great news. Thank you for sharing that with us, Doug. Any other quick announcements? Hearing none. Our next meeting is on the 26th. Lena Haley, founder of Kaleo Collective. And I don't know if you saw this in the newspaper on Wednesday, but congratulations to Doug Webster, recipient of St. Albert Public Schools Certificate of Recognition. Way to go, Doug. We are so proud of you. Birthdays and anniversaries. Natalia, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Okay, so we have Ash Khan on February 22nd, and that's Boss's birthday. We have Sherilyn Underhill on February 22nd, and of course we have a date to join Rotary, and it is Dan Holman, 12 years on February 20th. Congratulations.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Natalia. John and Mark, do you want to take a little bit of time?
Good morning, everyone. Mark, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well. Yourself?
I'm doing good. We're tight on time because we were supposed to be done 4 minutes ago. So
yeah,
I will just let you do the game, and I will leave all of my fines and for next week. And folks, they're piling up. So get ready.
Yeah, you got last week's and then this week's. Wow.
Yeah.
Pull out your pocketbook, your textbook next week.
Yeah. Next week, I'm going to get a Paul Harris out of all the fines I'm going to hand out. So just warning you that now.
I just want to find everyone who doesn't have cows running in their backyard right now.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Actually, the one set of fines I am going to hand out is if you got recognized today, either for being in the paper, for getting a Paul Harris, for basically if Mark at any point, Mark or James said your name today, yeah, just send us $5.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Scavenger hunt 50-50. Again, new game I came up with, well, John and I came up with. So there's 12 people in the game. And then Mark, who won last week, Mark Dixon, who won, he generously donated his winnings back into the fold. So there are now 12 people playing with one $5 extra thing to help your day go along. So Natalia, out of one, I need 2 numbers from 1 to 12.
10.
10, okay, that's, gotta find my page. 10 and another number.
7.
Kim Bugera and Jimmy the Greek. James still there? Kim, you there? I'm here.
Do I win? What do I win?
No, you don't win. You have to play the game.
Okay.
Is Kim there? I thought she was there. Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay, now it's a competition, right? It's scavenger hunt 50-50. Whoever can find, wait for it, a grapefruit knife that we can come back to the screen first. Go.
Grapefruit knife.
grapefruit knife. It's a little like curvy knife with the teeth and all that.
I need a grapefruit knife to win a prize.
Yeah.
I need a grapefruit knife. Where's the grapefruit knife, Denise?
He's going to Valley Village.
It's a knife that curves.
I love that James has earbuds in. That's
Sorry, I'm yelling at my lovely wife.
Everybody needs to wear earbuds for this contest in the future. It's fun.
Some people use spoons for that process.
James,
That's
I can
right,
go
but
home. I can
thanks.
have one here in about 20 minutes.
Thanks, Anita. Look it. I got a spoon.
That's a butter
right
knife.
here. Look at, no. Where?
No,
James,
See the serrated?
Oh.
Yeah, well, James, you're slower than Kim is anyways.
Yeah.
She's got the right utensil, so yeah.
What?
Kim got back first,
It
but
is.
thank you
That
for
is a
playing.
grapefruit spoon. Come on.
Kim's was a butter
Steve,
knife.
Kim's is a butter knife. That's not a grapefruit. It doesn't have
butter
to be
knife.
serrated.
It's not.
But I can't even see it. Sorry.
Serrated.
That's a butter knife.
No.
Neither of them are right, but okay.
Sure.
This is a grapefruit spoon. Is it the truth? Will it pass the 4-way test? Come on, Kim. You know you can't cut a grapefruit with a butter knife.
You can't cut it with a spoon.
No, but it's
Put the money
mission
back.
edges.
It's a grapefruit spoon.
I vote James.
He didn't ask
Thanks,
for a
Anita.
grapefruit spoon. He asked for a grapefruit knife.
I think they both should defer till
I'll
next
cut his
week.
heart out with the
They
spoon.
both lost.
Okay.
Put it back.
I love the enthusiasm, but neither of those was a grapefruit knife. So we will defer to next week. Well, actually, a good idea. That's great. If we don't get a winner, it just goes to next week. So hopefully you have a better chance next week. And if you want to play, you see how much fun it is? If you want to play, $5 per week to me, and you're in the game.
Should I bring my grapefruit knife to the office?
It's whatever. I just pick it out of the hat of a random item. Last week it was a penny. I don't know.
Ken, when have you ever eaten a grapefruit?
About 3 days ago.
Oh. My dog's attacking me. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mark and Jane and John. Sorry. I got James on the brain. So we are on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and we are posting the meetings on YouTube. So Sean and Ruan, we will send you the link to this meeting, and you can delete all of the other stuff that is outside of this. So thank you to Sean and Ruan for the amazing presentation this morning, to Colin for the inspirational moment, to everybody for their updates, to Mark and John and Natalia. And remember, if you need support, reach out to your club members. Lynn King is there as caring coordinator. How can we help? We want to help. Please join me in the 4-way test of the things we think,
say, and do. Is it the truth?
Is it
fair to all concerned?
Will it
build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it be beneficial
to all concerned?
Will it be fun?
Will it be fun?
Be careful.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and shout out to Anita for her virtual background. Woohoo!
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.